Hello everybody, it's your host for Wrestling News and Views, and today we've begun talk about one of the most famous segments in the history of Monday Night Raw. It was also one of the funniest segments ever done on the show. I'm talking about the This Is Your Life segment that aired on the July 24th, 1995 episode of Monday Night Raw. One of the biggest stars in wrestling history, The Rock was in his second year with the company, and he was red hot at the time. They kind of showed footage of The Rock playing football in college before showing Bear himself. And yes, she also had nothing nice to say about The Rock. So Mankind introduces Rocky Johnson as The Rock's estranged father, which of course wasn't true. They had a great relationship. But Rocky Johnson comes out and cuts a promo calling out his son. Then Mankind came back and hit The Rock with a double knee off the top rope. And then he locked The Rock in the mandible claw. So the whole idea that he had all these people from his past come out and embarrass him was absolutely brilliant. What makes it even better is that every single person that came out and talked about The Rock had a legitimate connection to him. You know, Tony Atlas really was a bodybuilder, and he really was close friends with The Rock at one point. Same with the evil Knaville, so they ended up airing it on tape delay, but it was definitely worth the wait. The entire segment was just brilliant. The pacing was perfect. All the actors were great, and it furthered the storyline beautifully. Of course, Rocky Johnson and Mrs. Isaac are The Rock's real-life father and his high school guidance counselor. When you look at the crowd, everyone is engaged. You can tell that they're enjoying every moment of this. The energy is fantastic. And this was long before the days of internet wrestling fans. You know, the hardcore fans, the smarks, they knew what was going on. And they knew that all this stuff with Mankind and The Rock was just an angle. But they didn't complain, didn't whine, they simply enjoyed the show. So it really added a lot of realism to the segment. Why is this happening? This makes no sense. Wrestling is fake, bro. You can also check out my social media accounts for all the latest news and views. And finally, please subscribe to my channel so you don't miss any of my new videos. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. But back in the day, people simply enjoyed it for what it was. And that's why this remains one of the greatest segments in wrestling history. The Rock was tapping out, but Rocky Johnson made his way back to the ring and helped his son escape. And he's also a member of the WWE Hall of Fame. And he came out and he trashed The Rock as well. But what's interesting is that he actually helped The Rock write his promos. It's the whole thing that he was writing all these horrible things for, Rock to say. And then The Rock turned on him at the end was very clever. So Mankind failed in his mission, but it was still one of the greatest segments in wrestling history. Said he was ashamed of him for all the things he had done. But Rocky Johnson turned on Mankind as well and chased him around the ring, and then Mankind ran away. She said she was disappointed that he never went to college after graduating high school, and the chemistry between Rocky Johnson and The Rock is fantastic. Like, you can just tell they're really a father and son, even though they weren't in kayfabe. When you look at The Rock's career, it's hard to believe that he could have had a better start. Sure, he had some issues early on with his character, but once they turned him heel, he was off to the races. Then we saw more footage of The Rock in college, and then it led to one of the funniest moments in wrestling history. And if you remember back in the 90s, this was really big because The Rock was trying to pursue both football and wrestling at the same time. So it was cool to see these clips of The Rock. Orphalia didn't have anything nice to say about The Rock either. He called him a disappointment. His biggest rival, however, was not in the company. In fact, this was part of a best-of-5 series that The Rock was dominating. He was up 3-1 at this point. But afterwards, Mankind came out to the ring to address The Rock after taking the loss. The Rock made his way out to the ring. So here's what happened next. Mankind had put a steel chair over The Rock's face. While The Rock was distracted by his father, so The Rock was laying in the ring busted open, bleeding profusely. And then Mankind took the mic and cut one of the greatest promos of his career. Talked about how this was a dream come true. He finally got to beat down The Rock, even though it wasn't televised. And he said that he had the satisfaction of busting The Rock open. He said that he could go on and tell stories about all the horrible things The Rock had done, but instead he was going to leave that for another day. Instead, he was gone. Leave The Rock alone with his father and let them bond over their pain and suffering. And then Mankind walked away. Now, The Rock was in the ring, cutting a promo, when Mankind came out and interrupted him. So what did Mankind do? Well, he had a special surprise for The Rock. That would be Mankind, aka Mick Foley. And Mick wanted to settle the score once and for all with the People's Champ, so he decided to do something special. Mankind starts introducing people from The Rock's past. First up was Tony Atlas, who was a bodybuilder and a former WWE champion back in the 80s. At the time, he was an ECW legend who was known for being one half of the Tag Team Champions, along with The Rock's future rival, DDP. Next came the evil Kenneville. Yes, that guy actually existed. He was dressed as a preacher, and he was there to talk about how corrupt The Rock was. Of course, this played off the fact that Rocky Maivia, The Rock's real name, had a really good relationship with his father, Rocky Johnson, who was a WWE Hall of Famer, and his grandfather, Peter Maivia, who was also a well-known promoter. So basically they were saying that The Rock was a bad seed and his family was disappointed in him. Very funny stuff. He decided to buy off The Rock's past and bring some of his former friends and family to the ring.
Let's get into it.
So earlier in the evening, The Rock had actually defeated Mankind in a match, and let's just say it wasn't pleasant. Next up was The Rock's old coach from the University of Miami, a man named Paul Bear Orfilia. Then we got to see The Rock's old high school guidance counselor, Mrs. Elizabeth Isaac, who was played by Tori Blackman. Enter Rocky Johnson, The Rock's real-life father and a WWE Hall of Famer, as Rocky. Johnson was making his way back to the ring after chasing Mankind around. The Rock ended up coming back and attacking his own father. The two brawled until officials broke it up. You know, at the time, there was a lot of talk about The Rock being a bad seed, a spoiled rich kid, and all those types of things. Oh, and I forgot to mention, they also brought out Pat Patterson, who was a legendary WWE writer and producer. You know, you don't often see multi-generational feuds in wrestling, but this really set it up well. The funny thing is that this segment was supposed to air live, but technical difficulties prevented that from happening. But it wasn't just the writing that made this segment so amazing. It was also the reactions from the audience. Nowadays, if you had something like this happen on Monday Night Raw, you would have some idiot in the comment section saying, "That's all for this week's episode." If you enjoyed today's content, please click that thumbs up button.